And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Flying weather for Tuesday morning, IFR here along and south of the Brooks Range on out to the northwest coast. Also for the western and central Arctic coast. Fair amount of marginal VFR in the interior with some more IFR along the Alaska Range over toward the Wrangell Mountains. Not too bad out over the Bering Sea. And for the southeast coast, marginal VFR with the IFR over toward the eastern border, as well as back in toward Yakutat. For the afternoon, big improvement here, mostly VFR for the North Gulf Coast, and then some IFR up here over the Koyukuk Valley along the southern slopes of the Brooks Range, and more IFR up along the Arctic coast. Pretty good conditions, VFR here from Nunivak Island right in toward the Tanana Valley, improving here over south central Alaska, but looking at marginal VFR, southern Kuskokwim Valley down to Kodiak Island, and still some lingering IFR over toward the border in the Panhandle. Eastern, southeastern Bering Sea, also to the eastern Bering. Pretty good VFR, Adak and Atka, Alaska Peninsula. Lower conditions there out toward Shimian-2. And then for Wednesday morning, pretty good out here for the Bering Sea, especially in the south there, with some VFR along the Aleutians, VFR or marginal VFR up into St. Lawrence Island and the Bering Strait, and then IFR here over southern Alaska and the North Gulf Coast area, and still over here over the western and central Brooks Range with the North Slope looking pretty good, VFR there. Southeast coast, mostly VFR with some IFR over toward Stewart and Hyder and those areas, Misty Fjords, and that kind of expands a little bit into the afternoon there, all the way up across Wrangell, Petersburg to probably just south of Juneau and moving into Prince of Wales Island. Otherwise, VFR, Glacier Bay here and Yakutat, areas of marginal VFR across the southern interior, VFR for Kodiak, VFR in the central part of the state, marginal VFR for the Brooks Range, with a little bit of IFR for the eastern Arctic coast, and IFR pushing into Adak and Atka Islands. And for the passes tomorrow, Anatuvik, expecting marginal VFR conditions at times throughout the day. Same forecast for Adigan. Lake Clark and Merrill, occasional marginal VFR. Looks to be VFR for windy. And for windy, rainy VFR, windy, marginal VFR. Same forecast for Isabel, occasionally marginal. Mentesta should be VFR for the day Tuesday, and Tanita, marginal VFR becoming VFR toward the afternoon and evening, and Portage, VFR. Chilkoot and White should be some improvement, starting out IFR becoming marginal throughout the afternoon. Freezing levels down that way, 2,000 to 4,000 feet there along the southeast coast tomorrow. Moving on to icing. Areas of light icing, light to isolated moderate icing here, Kodiak Island, Bristol Bay, Alaska Peninsula area, and also up here, western Arctic coast with that moisture. It's along and just south of the Brooks Range there. And another area here from the eastern Copper River Basin right on down across the southeast coast. And the jet stream here out to the west, we've got west-northwesterlies at about 100 knots at 33,000 feet blowing across the Aleutians. And then even stronger winds here, southwest becoming west-southwest up to 165 knots there, blowing across the northern southeast coast. And at 9,000 feet, westerlies here at about 50 knots through the northern and central interior areas. And then south 40 knots there right along Kodiak Island, and anywhere from 40 to 45 knots here across the southeast coast. Back out to the west, not too bad for the Aleutians. And for the 3,000 foot winds, we've got two bands here, westerlies 35 to 45 knots along the Arctic coast and North Slope. Another band here through the central interior at about 35 to 40 knots there. And then some winds with this low coming up, bringing 50 knot winds into just south of Kodiak Island, but pretty light here for the southeast coast into the southeast interior. And from there, going to turbulence, we'll see a couple of bands of light to isolated moderate turbulence there with those strong, with the wind areas, those two bands of wind along the Yukon River here, back out to Norton Sound, Seward Peninsula, St. Lawrence Island. The other one up here over the North Slope and Arctic coast, and with the low coming up toward Kodiak Island, That'll be another area of possible significant turbulence there, especially for small aircraft, surface to 6,000 feet.